Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. I brought a drink with me because I was like, I'm pretty sure everybody has a drink with them at home. But also, got some allergies, so my lovely allergy medicine has made my mouth super dry. So if I take lots of drinks, feel free to take lots of drinks yourself. We appreciate you joining us online. We recognize it's not the same as us being together. One of the things I'm learning in this season, are you learning something in this season? I believe that God wants us to always be learning something, that we're supposed to take advantage of every single day that He has for us. And instead of anticipating the change, the difference, the tomorrow, but to be living in the today and saying, God, what is it you want to teach me today? One of the things He's been teaching me is to learn to be content with what He has and where He has me today. And as we do that, as we find that He's helping me to be content, I'm finding that there's greater peace and there's greater joy knowing that He has me right where He wants me. And I pray that that's something for you too. In these ever-changing days, we're continuing our conversation on what does it look like to be wise? What does it look like? Because some of the things that I thought I knew, some of the things that I thought were true, seem to be changing a little bit. See, truth doesn't change, but our situations are changing. The way we used to do things is different than the way we may do things going forward. As we search for the best way to navigate through these new times, we desperately need His wisdom to do that successfully. So even as now, I'm just going to pause. Would you join with us? Would you join with our pastoral staff and our leadership team as they pray through what does it look like to do live services again? What does it look like to do that in a way where it doesn't create greater risk for other people? And what is the right when and how and where? All those questions, because their love for you is deep and it is wide. And it's not just a simple answer. And so even now, let's just pray. God, would you give our leadership wisdom? Would you help them to understand the best when and where and how and why? All those things, God, because it's their heart to serve your people. And God, would you help us to find contentment in the meantime, to trust that you have us where you want us and that you want to speak to us, that you have a good word for us for today, that you want to do something in me right where I'm at today in this moment. In this series, one of the things that we're focusing on is that God really wants us to reach out for and to grab wisdom. And so one of the best places to do that is in the book of Proverbs. If you've never really been introduced to the Bible, Proverbs is a collection of wise sayings. Solomon, who was said to be one of the wisest people ever, wrote many of them. And if you want a good resource to just go like, this is a good saying, this is beneficial to me, if I would live my life by some of these things, would my life be different? I'll tell you it is. Proverbs 19:8 says, do yourself a favor. How many of you would like to do yourself a favor? You would like to be on the plus side of things. It says, do yourself a favor and love wisdom. Learn all you can and watch your life flourish and prosper. How many of you want a life that is flourishing and prospering? I do. I know we all do. It says, do yourself a favor then. Love wisdom. We're going to talk about that today. What does it look like to love wisdom? Because a lot of us do love wisdom, but we just love our own wisdom. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. Look at the people around you, or if you're just online by yourself, you could just do the eyes that go sideways, because is it just me? Am I the only one who just loves my own wisdom? Am I the only one who sometimes thinks that I always just know what's best? It could be just me. Maybe in your chat rooms, if you're watching online, or in your places where you're sitting, and if you're with other people, if it's not just me, would you tell somebody it's not just him? Like, it might be other people. It's probably not you, but it could be other people. Depending on who you are, wisdom can sometimes look very different, because different situations sometimes require different solutions. Oftentimes I feel like I know what's right. Oftentimes I feel like I know what's right. Maybe because God's blessed me with lots of wisdom, His wisdom. And so I just feel like, man, I sure know what the right thing is. Maybe because he's blessed me to be intelligent or smart. I sure know the right things. Man, I can't tell you how many times I'm wrong. How many times I thought I was right? Oops. No, not even close. Maybe I'm the only one. Anybody else feel like they're a know-it-all? Oh, I'm sorry. That term is a derogatory term. Is that what you're saying? A know-it-all, that's not supposed to be a bad thing, right? I just think I do know it all, right? When we look at that term, people look at it negatively. But when we trust our own opinion more than we do God's direction or the wisdom that others can help provide, maybe we are know-it-alls. The problem is that our wisdom is limited to what we've learned, to our experiences, and possibly to how good we are at navigating Google. Today's message on seeking God for wisdom instead of our own will help us not make the mistakes that befall so many of us and allow us to access His wisdom that never fails. If I told you you could get some wisdom and you would be right all the time, how many of you wouldn't choose that? Because I sure, as much as I like my own stuff, I just don't like to be wrong. And I think that's why I choose my own way so often, because I think I'm right and I want to be right. But if I knew that if I just did what God wanted to be, I would not be wrong, I would do that all the time. Think about that. If you just followed His direction, you would not be wrong, even if it feels wrong. Because He doesn't lead us down wrong paths. He doesn't lead us into wrong places. His presence is always with us. See, God's wisdom versus man's wisdom wins every time. Hands down. It's not close. When we face our toughest moments, many of us, we just try to be wise. Here's the 3 common scenarios that I've run across in my short life. Some of you are like, it's not that short. You're getting pretty old. But some people say I'm a young man still. Not very many of you. A lot of time it used to be like he's definitely a young man. Now there's more of you like you're an old man. Well, it's all perspective. The 3 things, the number 1 is I go to myself for wisdom. This is probably one of the most common things that we do. We say, man, I got problems. I need answers. What do? We go to ourselves for wisdom. And that really says, I'm wise in my own eyes. When I look at myself, I go, I got all the wisdom I need. That's usually the number 1 place we go. The second place, I go to others or friends for wisdom. A lot of times we do that. We go to other places. Sometimes we say, collective wisdom sees better than me. Maybe you're the person who goes like, I don't always know the right thing. So what I need to do is kind of get a whole group, get a collection of them and go, what do they all think? That's probably the best thing to do. And see, that sounds good. You know, there's even probably some Bible verses that will help support that. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Collective wisdom sees better than you. That is true. The part where it's not true is when you just go around to ask people until you can get enough people to support your number 1. That I'm wise in my own eyes. I just need enough people to ratify my own decision, my own ideas. Once they all say, you're right, Joe, you're right, Joe, you're right, Joe, I go, hey, 5 people agreed with me, that's good. Sometimes that's what people will call me and say, hey, can I really get your opinion? I'm like, well, do you want my opinion? And why do you want my opinion? Do you just want me to tell you, do what you want to do? No, I'm not here to do that. The third one is, I go to God for His wisdom. This is less and less used. I go to God for His wisdom. People who do this believe that God sees best and has the best plans for me. They believe that God sees best and He has the best plans for me. So you got 3 choices: that I'm wise in my own eyes, or that collective wisdom sees better than me, or a perspective that says God sees best and He has the best plans for me. Can you think of a time that you thought you knew what would be best, but you only found out that the right answer was just something you didn't even know was out there? You didn't even know that was possible. If it was a multiple choice, you're like, it wasn't on my list. Like, of course I didn't get it right because I didn't know that was a choice. That's happened to me. Because my understanding is limited. Your understanding is limited. And in our lives and in our situations, God's understanding is not limited. Our friends' understanding is limited. I'm regularly sometimes thinking that I know what's best, but in fact, God, He knows what's best. Proverbs 12, it cautions us. It says, hey, fools, they think they know what's best. They think that their own way is right. But the wise, they'll listen to others. So this one encourages you. It says, hey, if you're willing to listen to others, including God, like if you're willing to listen to others, you can find wisdom. But fools, they will only think that they're wise in their own eyes. I don't know about you, but I do not want to be called a fool. I do not, at the end of my days, when people stand around, if there's people to stand around, and they go, you know what? Good guy, but kind of a fool. I don't think that's what I want them to say. If there was a tombstone, I don't think they want to engrave big fool. Nice guy, big fool. None of us do. How do you want your story written? Now is when we make those choices. Don't be wise in your own eyes. You have to make that choice. You have to believe that you're not the wisest person and that you don't have all the answers. And then you have to choose the source for your wisdom. Proverbs 28 says, those who trust their own insight, those who are wise in their own eyes, are foolish. But anybody who walks in wisdom is safe. I want to be safe. I love safety. Do you love safety? Do you want to feel secure in life? Do you want to feel like the decisions that you're making are good and safe and protected? I know that I do. I know that my family wants them to be that way. I know that they don't want to live on the tight wire. I know that they don't want the high risk, high reward lifestyle where it's like, I don't know, we may crash and burn. I think they want the safety that God's wisdom provides, which doesn't mean that it's always easy, but it means that He's always there with us and that He doesn't set us up for failure. Another verse to consider, it's in Isaiah. There's lots of wisdom throughout the Bible. Say that. There's lots of wisdom throughout the Bible. We're focusing on the book of Proverbs in this series, but we're going to put in some from some other places just so you can see it's all through there. Isaiah 5:21 says, woe to those, by the way, if you don't know what woe means, woe is like, whoa, caution, like flashing red lights, like stop, that's bad, don't go down that road. Woe. I don't know if you ride horses. I'm not a very good horse rider, probably because I'm bigger than most horses. I know I grew up, first time I got on a horse, I think I was like 5 or 6. Maybe this is why I don't ride a lot of horses. I was riding an older horse, like an old horse. It was probably like 25 years old. I don't know horse life expectancy, but this one was at the end of its life. Like this horse was around when my mom was a kid. His name was Big Red. I think it looked at me and was like, man, you're going to be a big kid already. I grew up in Nebraska. So I got on this horse and we're just walking down the way. We go down to the end of the road and there's probably a couple blocks. We turn around and the horse was like, I need to be home because home is safe. Out here with this little kid who doesn't know how to ride is not safe. You know what that horse did? It galloped all the way home. I think the horse was probably just taking a light stroll or a light gallop. You know what it felt like as a 5-year-old? I was just holding on for dear life. I was, woo! And I was so scared of falling. The horse was like, I'm just going home for safety. Whoa. When you are riding a horse, you tell that horse, whoa, like, hey, stop, pull back. We're not going that direction. That's not the place we want to go. That was some of the directions. Maybe that's just on old Westerns. But that's one of the things, whoa, hey, we're not going there. That's what it says in Isaiah. Like, woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. If you think you got it all, he says, whoa, pull back on that. That's going to lead you down a path that you are not going to want. That's going to lead you off the cliff, horse. You're going to find yourself in all the wrong places. You're going to be picking out stuff off of you that sticks into you that you're not going to like. Whoa, pull back. Little horse lessons this morning. I know you're probably like, thank you for all of that. Sometimes we just spend ourselves like, you know what, I don't really have as much problem looking to myself. I realize I got problems. So I call my friends. I Facebook it out. I go, hey, everybody give me your feedback. Not all that's bad. In Proverbs 15 it says, refuse good advice and watch your plans fail. Take good counsel, watch them succeed. Getting input from others can be very beneficial. I'll tell you the major decisions that our church makes, none of them are made by one person. We have a lead pastor. His name's Pastor Robert Geiler. He's amazing. One of my best friends. But I'll tell you, he's so wise that he doesn't make decisions by himself. That he has a leadership team, and he has a core team, and he has a support team, and he has a business council team. He has a bunch of teams who surround him and support him with the wisdom to help make good decisions. He even has a reopening team that is meeting to try to pray through and go, God, give us the right wisdom on how to reopen service in a healthy way, and what does that look like, and when should that be, and where should we do those, all that stuff. Because being wise in your own eyes leads you down wrong paths. Whoa. Human wisdom can be helpful, but only to a point. Taking advice from others and listening to correction and surrounding yourself with others who are wise is super helpful, and I highly recommend it to a point. Because all of us have limited vision. I've had lots of people in my 20 years of being a pastor. I know that may be hard for you to believe. You're like, you look like you're 22. So you've been doing this since you were a baby? No, I'm a little older than that. Ultimately, many of the people who were asking for wisdom, asking for advice, they were just looking for somebody to agree with what they already wanted to do. If you call one of our pastors, one of our leaders, one of our life group leaders, they're going to point you out to the Bible and say, what does God say about that? Because that's really all that matters. Because his wisdom never fails. It never has an expiration date on it. What is he saying to you? Because it actually may be different than what he said to this person in their situation, because their situation is not the same as your situation. We want to point people to Jesus, to his wisdom. Here's our key scripture for this morning. So if you were just going to focus on or highlight or underscore one of these verses, Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5, 6, and the beginning of 7. It says, trust God from the bottom of your heart. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure everything out on your own. Are any of you like that? You try to figure everything out? Guess what? Sometimes you just can't figure it all out. And you have to trust. Go back to the first sentence. Trust God. Because when you try to figure it all out, you can't. Or you end up figuring it all out wrong. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Don't assume that you know it all. Don't assume that you know it all. Another version in my Bible here, it says, in verse 7, it says, do not be wise in your own eyes. In the New Living Translation, Proverbs 3:5, it says, trust the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. That means don't lean on with lots of weight your own understanding. Don't rely on yourself, because if you do, it's like when somebody pulls that chair out, you're going to fall because your own understanding is so much more limited than what it should be. I remember a time when I had a truck. If you've ever had a truck, I loved having that truck. In fact, I had just had a newborn who's now my 18-year-old son, just graduated high school, Reed. When When I got that truck, I actually had begged my dad for that truck. It was his truck. So I was like, hey, Dad, can I buy your truck? Can I buy your truck? Can I buy your truck? Eventually, he relented. But before, he said, you don't want this truck, man. This truck, the gas mileage, like 15 miles a gallon. You can't afford that. You live in California. You're going to be driving a lot of miles. You're not going to want this. Like, this is going to be bad for you. And I was like, nah, Dad, it'll be great. Trust me. I should have listened to my dad. How many of you are in that place where you learn later, like, Father knows best? Earthly fathers often know best. Earthly mothers often know this. Heavenly Father always knows what's best. Well, I mean, I wrote it out for 2 years, and when we were getting ready to have our second baby, guess what? I couldn't get another car seat in the back of that thing. I should have listened to my dad. So I was like, I couldn't do it, so I gotta sell it. Well, this is easy for me. When I was in college, I worked at a car dealership, and I had worked in lots of different areas. And then I worked in the finance department, and I'd accidentally started selling cars when I wasn't really intending to, and I got good at that too. I was like, I know how to sell cars. I could do this easy. So I put signs on it, and I was like, man, this will be fast and simple. I'll make money on this deal. 3 weeks into it, not one person called, not a single person. When I would go to work, I was working at a church. I was pastoring. I parked it right out front on a main street. Nobody called. Nobody came by. 3 weeks. I was like, I thought I would sell them in 3 days. I was actually in my office, and I felt God talk to me, and he said, you don't need any help on this, do you? Have you ever had God ask you a question you feel like is rhetorical? Where he's just asking you to think about it for a second? You got this, huh, Joe? You don't need my help. You see, I think I was wise in my own eyes. Like, I knew this. I was experienced. I had understanding in this area. I didn't need God's help. In fact, I never asked him about it at all. About buying it, about selling it, about any of it. I didn't need his help. I sat in my office and I repented. Repented means you say you're sorry and you turn, you say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to go through situations in life where I don't involve you, God. I'm sorry. Not because I'm stuck with the truck, but because I don't want to live life on my own, and I don't want to be wise in my own eyes, because I know it leads down the wrong path. I prayed that prayer. 30 minutes later, somebody knocked on my office door. 30 minutes. A guy said, hey, is this your truck out here? I said, yeah. He said, can we take it for a drive? Sure. We drove it down the road and back. He's like, great. I see you're asking this. He's like, cash okay? I said, yeah, cash is okay. He paid me cash and took my truck. You know what my biggest problem was after I actually prayed and gave it to God? My biggest problem was how I was going to get home. Because he saw so much bigger, so much farther than I did. But we go through life, and that's just one situation, but so often we just forget to include him and allow him to be in the center of all of our issues, all of our things through life. Because we're wise in our own eyes. Or we have these life experiences and we're smart, and I want to encourage you. That's not the best way. Hey, do you guys ever get encouraged by different things? I was listening to some music. My daughter, Malia, and I, we have a young singer. He's a gospel singer. His name is Jonathan McReynolds. He's great. He just released an album recently. I don't work for him, by the way. I'm not. But he wrote, these are some of his words that he penned, and I was really proud of him because it spoke to my heart. But he was saying in this song called Situation, he said, you see the big picture. You hold the frame. Past, present, and future, you see the same. I know that it's very human to want everything my way, but if I don't get what I pray for, my hope is in your name. So I'm not asking for an outcome or praying for results. I'm not hoping that it all goes exactly how I want. No, I'm not asking you to do it or asking that you don't. I'm just inviting you into my situation. Because through I want you in my situation. He just says, God, I want you in the middle of my situation because I know it's going to be better with you in the middle of it than me by myself. could give you 100 more stories of times that I've forgot to put him in the center of my situation, and it's gone wrong. I'm sure that you've got some. Here's a couple verses that kind of point those things out. God says the world's wisdom is foolishness. His is definitely the best. In Ephesians 5, it says, be careful how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because these days they're evil. It says, don't be foolish then, but understand what God's will is. Understand the Lord's will. You know, it's foolish to do life our own ways without following God's plan. Why? Isaiah tells us, he says, for my thoughts, they're not your thoughts. Neither are my ways your ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. Isaiah 55, 8 through 9. He goes, I'm thinking these things, you're thinking these things. My ways are like this, and your ways are still like this. He goes, I'm seeing the big picture, you're just seeing the moment. We're not on the same level, Joe. I've got better plans, bigger plans. I see tomorrow, you just see today. It's not fair to ask my third grader to handle some of the same problems that I would ask my college freshmen, because they have different levels of experience and different levels of education. God knows so much more, is so much further in advance than we are and than I am. But sometimes I think I've got it. I don't. I've got a video from some friends here from our church. Their names are Alan and Shannon. They're going to share a short story of their own life where they invited God into their situation and he rescued them. Enjoy.
I'm Alan and this is Shannon. And we're super excited to be talking about kind of sharing a little bit of our story through this whole Be Wise series and really leaning in and understanding what God's wisdom looks like. And we moved here about 7 months ago.
November 1st.
Showed up just in time for the snow.
Yep.
And it's been an incredible journey, lots of crazy stuff. But part of coming here and landing in Utah, we kind of had a blank slate to kind of say, what do we want to do? What do we want to pursue? What is God laying out for us? And in that, we were kind of looking into some franchise opportunities for small business. And one of those was a cinnamon roll shop.
Mm-hmm.
And we were kind of going down the path of pursuing it. It was a large investment to kind of get into that. And early March, we had the CEO of the franchise reach out to us and say, hey, we've got a franchise store already going in Salt Lake City. Would you guys be interested in taking it over? And it was going to be a fourth of the total investment to step into an already going store.
In the middle of
downtown Salt Lake City, right by the university. And we were like,
it looked like
this is it.
Yeah.
Like, what an open door. This is incredible.
Yeah.
And we had to kind of make quick decisions, and they wanted
like a week.
Right. They wanted us to take it over by the 1st of April. And so in that, though, kind of through that week, seeking out counsel and just trying to really sense, is this really it? Or is this a distraction or what? And I just didn't have peace. And I kept trying to get peace.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, it was a Friday night, reached out to actually Pastor Rob. We were just talking through, and I said, is fear and all of that, is it always louder than peace? Or how do you really sense peace? And I remember talking through it and kind of coming to this place of going, peace is always a whisper.
Mm-hmm.
And God is whispering, but we have to lean in to hear what He's trying to say to us. And we talked about it that Friday night, and part of the kind of the backstory of that for you.
I was actually very mad at first when he told me because I felt like we've been on this roller coaster. But it was interesting because I remember when he first came to me with this idea. I remember because I was standing at this kitchen sink doing dishes. And I remember when he said it, like this idea about franchising this place, and I had that check deep in my gut, and like I knew that's not right. But part of this whole journey of coming here is we're wanting to explore and think outside the box, and I could see he was really excited about the idea. So I didn't want to be like, well, God said no. That's never a good way to start a conversation in your marriage. And so. But what I ended up doing, and I look back now and see that the lesson I learned, but what I ended up doing is kind of abandoning that. I knew what God said in the very beginning. I kind of abandoned that and was just like almost pushing him to do it because I wanted him to be happy and excited about something. And so I was letting that trump this like check I had in my spirit that God's like, yeah, that's not it. And what I see now would have been the better choice is if God was revealing to me before he revealed to him, the better choice would have been for me to take that to prayer, to quietly seek God in it, and to know that when it came down to it, and it was time to say, I don't have peace about it, I would have said that to him, and then probably the Lord would have obviously shown you the same thing.
Right.
And so it was for me, a journey of when you do have that check or that sense, or God's saying no to something, you're to take it to prayer and not to abandon it just because things on the outside start looking like they make sense.
Yeah, and it really felt like, and I remember asking the question, like, this looks like a wide open door, but maybe it's a distraction to what God really wants to do. And so we came out of that Friday night, and Saturday morning we called the CEO and said, we're out. Like, this, we're just not supposed to do this. And I remember getting off the call and just this complete sense of peace enveloped myself and you.
Yeah.
And then like a week later,
COVID started.
Unbeknownst to us, like everything goes on lockdown.
It's been horrible.
And like we look at it going, we would have been trying to relaunch the store right in the middle of.
Dump so much money into it. Yeah.
And so it was crazy in that walking through that season and going, man, God knew so much more than us. He was so much smarter. But we had to lean in and listen for what he was trying to do. And God, where's the peace in this? And man, he knew a lot more than we knew.
He knew what he was doing.
and so I hope that just encourages you that in the midst of decision making, in the midst of seeking out what's there, even when something looks so incredible and so perfect, listen for peace.
Yeah.
And that really takes leaning in and going, I'm gonna hear what you're saying, God. So hope that encourages you. Well, good morning, Crossroads.
Good morning.
Well, thanks, Alan, and thanks, Shannon. I so appreciate you sharing your story with us. Thank you that you showed and modeled what it looks like to invite God into your situation and then to seek him and for his direction throughout the process. And oftentimes, his direction looks like him giving you peace or not. In spite of all the facts lining up and looking great, sometimes we feel like the open door thing, that's very different than God giving you peace. And what would have looked like earthly wisdom and it's such a great deal, you realize now in hindsight would have been a terrible deal for you. Thank you for showing us that God knew best and that by trusting him, he saved you and he rescued you from some disaster that you guys would have been facing. He's so good and he's so great. Jesus modeled to us similarly that he invited God into his situation as he was facing the toughest decision in his life, as he was getting ready to pay our price, the price for our sin. The night before his crucifixion, he was in the garden and he was praying. He went with a couple of his friends and he was praying and he said, Father, if you're willing, could you take this cup? Could you take this thing from me? Is there another way? Can I help them somehow where it doesn't require me to be brutally beaten and killed on a cross. That's me filling in the blanks of what take this cup from me means. Is there another way? But Jesus finished that prayer, not my will, but yours be done. He actually ends up saying, God, I want what you want more than I want what I want. I don't know about you, but sometimes in the decision-making process, what I want and what I need almost always can sometimes trump even those feelings of when we ask God or when we ask for his input, but you're like, I want your input as long as you agree with what I want, God, but not if you're going to disagree with me. Same thing if we ask for wisdom from other people and we go, hey, what do you think? What do you think? Well, if they don't agree with us, we're like, well, I don't need your help now. I just want you to tell me that I'm right. Jesus modeled the right way to do it. He says, God, I want what your will is. In fact, when his friends, the disciples, said, how do you pray? He gave them an example prayer. It's not one that we should all pray every day. It's not the only way to pray. But he said, hey, start by talking to God. Say, our Father who's in heaven, praise your name. Hallowed be your name. Like, you're holy. Look at you. Look at the place where you're at. Like, you give God the respect and reverence for where he is, because that changes your perspective for where we are. It says, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come and your will be done. Starting the prayer saying, God, I want what you want. I want your the things that you want and how you want it done. Do that. What if our prayers started like that? Because sometimes I feel like my prayers start with, here's what I want and here's what I need. Get her done. That's very different than, God, I'm inviting you in my situation and I want what you want because I know that what you want is best. I want to share with you a story from the book of Jeremiah. There's a really popular verse that's one of my favorite verses. It might be one of your favorite verses too because it's a promise from God. In Jeremiah 29:11, it says, this is God speaking to them through the prophet Jeremiah, and he says, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Doesn't that sound great? Doesn't everybody want to sign up for that? I do. Can I tell you the context for which he made this promise? The context is that God's chosen people, his promised people, the ones that God promised to give his land and give place to and always love, and that he would be their God and they would be his people, they were in captivity in Babylon. They'd been carried away and become captives. King Nebuchadnezzar had taken them away from their land and brought them into Babylon. They did not kill them all. Why didn't they kill them all? Because they had a different plan. They would bring people in from other nations, from other people, and they would kill their culture by assimilation. They would say, you're going to live with us, and before you know it, you'll be Babylonians. You'll worship our gods. You'll like our foods. You'll like our music. You'll wear our clothes. You'll be Babylonians. We're going to wipe out the history of your gods. We're going to wipe out the culture. That's what was happening. In the midst of God promising them big things. Let me tell you some of the other things that God said to them. Because in the midst of crisis and in the midst of some of the biggest challenges, I know what I would be feeling. I'd be feeling like, let's get out of here. Let's run. This is not the promise of God. This is not what he has for us. He has a place for us and a plan for us. And he has a hope and a future, all these good things for us. And it can't be here in Babylon. Because we're God's people. Listen to what he says earlier in there. I'm not going to put it on the screen. I'm just going to read it to you. In verse 4 it starts, and this is in Jeremiah chapter 29. So if you want to read later in the week or in your life groups, in Jeremiah 29:4 he says, the Lord Almighty told them, he said, hey, build houses. Settle down. Plant gardens. Eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters, and increase in number and do not decrease there. Also, seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which you've been carried to in exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. I don't get that. I want to do all these other things, but he actually says, be content with your situation. Know that I'm God. It's going to be all right. You guys need to settle down. Live. You're in captivity? Fine. Get a house. Get married. Have kids. Plant a garden. Do life. Know that I'm God. I'm not leaving you. Maybe your situation is different than their situation, but he says, trust me today. I'm with you. Maybe this situation won't end, and their situation, we're going to show it doesn't end right away. In fact, he tells them it's not going to end anytime soon. He goes, but I'm going to be your God, and you need to learn to live life in the middle of the situation that you're in and flourish. He then says, this is what the Lord says in verse 10. He says, when 70 years are completed in Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my good promise to bring you back to this place. He says, I'll see you in 70 years. I'm going to bring you out in 70 years. I'm like, why not in 7 days? Why not in 70 days? Why are we talking years and not days? I don't know, but I know he's God and he's coming. Then verse 11 came where he says, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Then you'll call on me, and you'll come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And you'll seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart, and I will be found by you, and I will bring you back from captivity. I love the promises of God. But part of those promises means sometimes we got to make it through tough times and trust that he's with us and believe that his wisdom is better than our wisdom. We have to focus on knowing that don't be wise in our own eyes. Know that God knows better than we do, even when we don't like how it's going. Because I can tell you a lot of times I don't like how it's going. And sometimes I think, I'm going to craft this amazing way on how we're going to get ourselves out of it. He goes, well, you should listen to my plan. Trust me. Trust me. My plan is better than your plan. So I want to invite you. We're going to start reading Proverbs together, one proverb a day. It really is usually comprised of between 20 to 30 verses. Probably is a 5-minute read online. We're going to show you a slide here where you can type this down on something. It's in YouVersion. YouVersion is an online Bible app. So if you have a smartphone, kind of any type of phone, the YouVersion app is right here. You can just type YouVersion into your app store, whatever your app store is, or the Bible app. And then the Proverbs one is found in there, the reading plans, the wisdom of Proverbs. And we'd like to invite you to do that, where you can read a little bit, get a little bit of wisdom every day. We'd love to do that together. We'd like to invite you to do that with us, because we know that a little bit of his wisdom goes a long way. A little bit of my wisdom goes all the wrong ways. Maybe you find that's true for yourself too. Can I pray with you this morning? God, I thank you so much that you're willing to rescue me from myself. That every time I think I'm wise in my own eyes, you offer me a way out. You say, Joe, I've got a way for you. I've got a solution for you. Would you just listen? God, would you help us to trust you and to invite you into our situation far sooner than we used to? Today, could we pray that prayer and say, God, I want to invite you into my everyday life, to the things that are going on. God, I'm going to learn to be content where you have me. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to seek your wisdom out every single day. I'm going to believe that you know better than I do. And some of you may be here with us today, and maybe you've never chosen to follow God. You've never chosen to listen for his direction in your life because he doesn't really have a place in your life. Well, he invites us. He says he stands at the door and he knocks, and we have the choice to answer or not. Maybe you hear him knocking right now. What would you say? Would you say, come into my life? Take away my sins. Help me start fresh and clean. I need your wisdom. I don't want to live the way that I've been living. I want to trust you. I want to know you. I want to have a friend like you, someone who can lead me down the right path, who will help me pull back and go, whoa, from all the wrong things that I've been doing. God, I need you. You can pray a prayer like that. There's no magic words. It's a relationship with God. If you want to do that, you can just text, I want Jesus, all in one word, to 97,000, and our staff will follow up with you. They'll encourage you and support you in your journey. You can also, on any one of our online platforms, just say, hey, I want somebody to pray with me. I want to commit to my life to Jesus for the first time. Or use one of the raise your hand things. They'll be there for you. It's the most important thing you'll ever do. We want to support you in that. I want to pray for you this week that every day you'll ask God for his wisdom, believing that he knows best. Jesus, would you help us to choose you first every day this week? That you know best and we don't. As simple as that. Thank you for your love and your kindness as we go through this series, trying to understand what it looks like to be wise, just not in our own eyes. We love you and thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for being with us. We love you, love you, love you, and are asking for God's continued blessing in your life. And we look forward to connecting with you continued in the future. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.